Hey, I'm Steve Lato, and today we're going to take a walk to the Estivant Pines Nature Sanctuary. This is just outside Copper Harbor, Michigan, one of my favorite places on earth. That is the Estivant Pines and Copper Harbor also. Love them both very much. Spend a lot of time up here in the summertime and always like to go for a walk to the Estivant Pines at least once each time I'm up here. This is just outside of town, and I'll explain to you how to get here and so on. And I will, like I often do with my hike videos, up and over a tree first. We will speed up some of this because otherwise the good parts would be just too far down the road for most people's attention spans. But the Estivant Pines Nature Sanctuary was named after Edward Estivant, who originally owned this property. And then he sold it to the Calumet and Hecla Mining Company back in 1947. Those of you who are familiar with my book Death's Door know all about Calumet and Hecla. That was the big copper mine located largely in the Calumet area, south of here just a ways. But the tract of land then wound up in the ownership of Universal Oil. And Universal Oil was the successor to Calumet and Hecla. That's right around 1968. And then Universal Oil allowed several hundred acres of nearby forest to get cut down and logged. And it was around that time that some locals thought, hey, maybe we should preserve this. By the way, here's one of the markers along the trail. The trail is very well marked. You really can't get lost out here. So that's one of the things I like to tell people. Today, I'm actually carrying a GPS on me just to do some more data crunching of my own. But you won't get lost out here. It's fine. So when the logging started taking place out here, some people became concerned. And the reason is that this is one of the last stands of virgin white pine in Michigan and probably in the entire Midwest. The white pine used to dominate Michigan forests, and it was prized for its lumber. And so many of the white pine forests were just clear cut. And this one, for the most part, was saved because it was in such a remote location. And you can see from the area, we're going to go up and down some hills and past some cliffs and so on. And you can see it is kind of remote. And I think because it's so far north and also the terrain is kind of rough, like these rocks I'm walking by right here, that logging it wasn't as easy as some other parts of Michigan might have been. So it didn't get logged. And then in the late 60s and early 70s, the Michigan Nature Association helped lead a 3-year statewide fundraising campaign to buy 200 acres of the Estivant Pines from Universal Oil in 1973. And what they started out with was a 200-acre purchase. And then later on, they bought some more, and they expanded it several times so that now the Estivant Pines actually encompasses 510 acres. It's quite a big area, and like I said, it's one of the last old-growth white pine stands in Michigan. I believe the Hartwick Pines in the Lower Peninsula might have some similarly old white pines in it, but this place is absolutely magnificent. It's like a time capsule. There are 2 loops out here. Okay, and right now I'm walking on the loop on the right is how I like to describe it. It's basically a 1-mile loop. It passes some of the largest and oldest of the giant white pines. These trees, the white pines, can grow to be over 125 feet tall. And so when we get to a couple of them, I'll actually tip the camera up and we'll take a look at them. The second loop, which will be on then after this loop, is a 1.2-mile loop, and it also cuts through groves of pine, maple, and oak. Believe it or not, one of the trees out here, they calculated and they figured this out, probably started growing, i.e. it was born, in 1695. So some of the trees out here are very old. If it was, first growing in 1695. They believe that around that time a wildfire swept through the area so that most of the trees came in after that. But even so, 1695 is quite a ways back. If you're curious, the 2 loops, when added together, equal about a 2.5-mile hike. And there's a parking lot at the entrance that's pretty well marked. The road from Copper Harbor out to the parking lot is likewise marked. You'll see signs saying E Pines for Estivant Pines. And this forest, as you might imagine, is occupied by all manner of animals and birds. They think there are about 85 bird species that call this place home. or pass through, such as woodpeckers, hawks, and red crossbills. I admit I've never seen one of those. The soil is kind of thin, and it's a boreal climate. But despite that, there are also wildflowers that grow in here, such as asters, clintonia, baneberry, and violets. We've also passed by some thimbleberry bushes earlier. I made a point to focus on the big fat leaves of the thimbleberries. The thimbleberries were out. I actually had some and ate some at a different hike I did on this trip, but did not see any ripe thimbleberries in the Estivant pines. It's always good to stop when you see them. So here is the map. You are here, about 1 mile into the 2.5 mile hike. So the Estivant pines are, like I said, now part of the Michigan Nature Association's collection of lands that have been set aside and will just be kept natural like this. It's, like I said, 510 acres. 4 parcels over time were put together. The first parcel bought back in 1973, and the last of the parcels so far in 2005. In case you're curious, the Michigan Nature Association was established in 1952. One of the most scenic trees you'll encounter on this hike through the Estivant Pines is this guy. And, you know, it reminds you of those redwoods out in California that they, you know, carve and they let you, you know, drive a vehicle through or something. This one's not quite that big, but the tree's hanging in there. It's doing the best it can despite the fact that it's lost a major portion of its foundation. But I've seen photographs of kids standing inside there and people peeking through and whatnot. But this is just an old white pine refusing to give up its fight. So you got to stop by and pay your respects. The Estivant Pines, like I said, outside of Copper Harbor, that's the tip of the Keweenaw Peninsula, which is the thing that juts out into Lake Superior from Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Copper Harbor is the northernmost town in Michigan, and this is just outside of Copper Harbor. So what you do is if you're in downtown Copper Harbor, oh, wait, sorry, we'll check these guys out, and I'll work the angle around a little bit. There we go. These are a couple of the old fellows. We'll encounter maybe a dozen or so of these along the walk. And there are even more back in the woods that you don't necessarily get near as you're hiking. But this trail is, you know, cut pretty well through here to take you by some of the more scenic of the big white pines. But if you're looking to get the Estivant Pines, get to Copper Harbor. That's the easy part. And then take 41 through town, and you look for a street called 2nd Street, and that's right next to the community center. And you turn right there, and you go up the hill, and trust me, you'll know it's a hill. You're not going to say, gee, I wonder if this is a hill or not. There is a hill. You'll pass by Manganese Falls, and if you want to stop and check out some kind of funky falls, those are there. And by the way, there was a tree called the Giant, and it fell down a few years ago. Very sad story. That sign there talked about how you could hike out to it if you had proper equipment and knew what you were doing. Once again, we're going to take a look at a couple tall guys here. Again, probably 100, 120, 125 feet tall. A couple white pines here. Actually, 3 or 4 of them. Big guys. Got to love them. But like I said, if you're taking the road out of town, 2nd Street, or also called Manganese Road, you go about a mile, a little over a mile. And then there's a road called Clark Mine Road, and that, I believe, is where it turns into dirt. You got to slow down, be careful out there. Some of these roads are about 1 car wide, and there are places where 2 cars cannot pass each other. But, you know, I remember in the old days when if you were taking a streetcar out to this place, you probably couldn't do it. I'm talking about a non-SUV or non-4-wheel drive. But now the road's not that bad. It's dirt, you know, it's dusty, it's got rocks on it, and it's narrow. But I think the average car can make it out to the parking lot of the Estivant Pines. And then you'll go about a mile, a little over a mile, and you'll see a sign saying E-Pines to the right, and that's Burma Road. And you'll turn right there. It's a very, very sharp angle. Go about a half a mile down Burma Road, and you'll see trailhead parking. A big sign, I think I caught that at the very beginning, showing you that you are at a Michigan Nature Association preserve, and a sign saying it's the Estivant Pines. There are porta potties there, and a couple signs with maps and even handouts. And in fact, much of the information I'm giving you right now. I'm reading to you off of one of the handouts that I snagged from that sign at the entrance to the sanctuary. But like I said, the Estivant Pines is one of my favorite places to visit. And as I said, it's well marked. So you are here. That's at basically the end of the first loop. You can cut straight back to the parking lot, hard left, or go right, as we're going to do here, and continue on the second loop. And the second loop is actually called the Bertha Daubendiek Memorial Grove Trail. I apologize, I'm probably mispronouncing the last name, but I believe Bertha was very important in the history of the Estivant Pines. Actually, Bertha was one of the founders of the Michigan Nature Association, so that's who it's named after. So, like I said, it's about a 2.5-mile hike. They go through here fairly often, and they clear the trails. If a tree falls over the trail, they'll slice it and push it off the trail. But they'll leave it there, let nature take its course, because, trees do fall down in nature. At least they tell me they do. I come by in the morning, one's on the ground. I assume it fell, even if I didn't hear it. And, yeah, kind of experimenting a little bit with the camera here, too, in case you didn't figure that out. And they put some nice walkways in, too. I've been through here before in past years when they didn't have the walkways. And, you got your feet muddy and so on. But, again, here we are, a nice view looking up at some 100, maybe 120-foot tall white pines. And when European settlers first came to America, one of the things they discovered was these gigantic forests filled with white pines. And if you think about it back then, in the 14, 15, and 1600s, they were still, sailing the world in big ships. And one of the most important pieces of a ship, of course, is the pole in the middle, the mast that they put the sails on. And you wanted to find tall, straight, strong trees to make that wooden piece of the boat. And so I know that a lot of trees were taken down very early on for building, but in particularly for building, the big ocean-going ships. It's kind of hard to think about that now because we don't travel by wooden boat on the oceans. But again, passing through, this is the second loop of the Estivant Pines here. And interestingly enough, this is like late July when I'm shooting this. Very few bugs. No mosquitoes, 1 or 2 flies. I'm not sure why that is. It wasn't terribly windy. It was warm. But on a day like today, you'd often think there'd be some insects. And I know that a lot of times the insects have more to do with recent rainfall and humidity or something. And there were some storms that hit the area in June and July. But for whatever reason, I love these roots, by the way. For whatever reason, there were not a lot of bugs in the air today. And like I said, I've been out here this time of year, swarmed, and I've been out here before, like today, where I think I encountered 1 fly, and I think we just agreed to go our separate ways. So, again, this is what the forest will look like for the most part if we simply left it alone. There is a trail, of course, that's been worn through here, and occasionally you'll see the evidence of people clearing the trails by sawing the logs so they can, just make it so you can walk through. But other than that, and occasionally putting down the little boardwalks for hikers, this is pretty much what you see is what you get when you go into an untouched white pine forest. So, again, bypassing some of these smaller trees. It's only 75 feet tall, but it's great. One of the reasons I like Copper Harbor is so much to walk around and check out, whether it's, down at the dockside or Hunter's Point, which I think I shot a video of. We'll put that up shortly. But here, this is just, like I said, the Estivant Pines, white pine forest, virgin white pine, and was saved from the lumbermen back in the 1970s and in later years by the Michigan Nature Association, and a big push from the public to raise the money to buy it from the people who had it. And there's a whole story behind that, and it's a fascinating one. But it's good to know that sometimes people will get together and save stuff like this. And, I could look at this stuff all day long. Some of these trees get toppled over in heavy storms. And, eventually nature will reclaim that. But for the time being, it's just, almost like a work of art to see these root structures here. And again, like I said, we're on the second loop of the Estivant Pines here. This is the Memorial Grove Trail. And I find this stuff fascinating. I've been out here before in the rain, and there are portions of the trail that get a little slippery in the rain because you're walking down a incline like this, and perhaps you'll encounter some rocks or something. But I've been out here, like I said, in the rain and the summer. Pretty much, it's the same. It's fun to look at. It's cool to see, and you will encounter other hikers, but not many. And even though the parking lot had probably 5 or 10 cars in it, I think I've only encountered 2 or 3 people on this hike, and I think I might encounter a few more before I get out, but it's not crowded. I've hiked some national parks and some state parks elsewhere, and you encounter crowds of people, and it really changes the feeling of the park when you're encountering lots of people, or on a day like today when you're literally hearing nothing but the sounds of the wind and the animals and other things. There we go. A couple of hikers. But it's just a great place to take a walk. And by the way, the 2.5 miles goes by very quickly because of the changing scenery and so on. It's not like if you're going to go out and walk, it's at 10 times around a track by a football field. Yeah, it doesn't feel like that at all. So cruising along here, like I said, the tail end of the Memorial Grove Trail. And like I said, the 2 trails, you don't have to do them both, but I always do them both. They have slightly different feelings to them. The first trail goes down a little lower. I think a low point of the hike, elevation-wise, is in the first loop. The second loop goes over some more rocky terrain and so on. But like I said, it's pretty well marked. You're not going to get lost out here. It's pretty well cleared, so there's no obstacles to climb over. And I think the most difficult thing you'll encounter is if it's wet and you might be, like here, going downhill a little bit. And, if you're not careful, you might slip or something like that. But other than that, you're fine. No poison ivy, which I have to report for my friends who know about poison ivy. I'm deadly allergic to the stuff. It does exist in the Upper Peninsula, but I did not encounter any on this trip, which made me feel very good, because when I encounter poison ivy, I have to go to the doctor and get drugs for it. So, finishing up the loop here. Again, the Estivant Pines, it's a couple miles outside of Copper Harbor. If you ever go to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, I urge you to get to the Keweenaw Peninsula, and I urge you to go to the top and visit Copper Harbor. And while you're there, check out the Estivant Pines. About 2.5 miles outside of town. Half of that's on a dirt road. Your car's going to get dusty. But this guy here got knocked down, hit by lightning a couple years ago. And that's why he's got that weird look on the base there. And you pop out on the trail right here behind the sign that had the map on it showing us how the 2 loops were configured. And so we just popped out at the tail end right there. You are here. That's where we are. And the parking area is to our left. So, going to hike on out of here and go across some of this recent. This is a new addition here. This is brand new. I think they put that in this year. So they're doing a good job of keeping the erosion down and making sure that people can hike it comfortably and cleanly and enjoy themselves. So like I said, if you ever get to Copper Harbor, please do visit the Estivant Pines. It is a collection of old-growth white pine forest unlike anything you'll see almost anywhere else on Earth. Thanks for coming along. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.